Welcome back. In this lecture, I'll try to explain to you liberalism or idealist school of international politics. Liberal or idealist school of international politics. Right? Liberal or idealist school of international politics. What is liberalism or idealist school of international politics? It is basically the first it is basically the first approach to international politics. International politics. It is first approach to international politics. It is, right? What it is. To understand what it is, I will have to take you back to liberalism. What is idea of liberalism? Right? Liberalism, as we understand, it is about individual rights. It is about autonomy of self. When you reflect this principle and take this principle from individual individual to state, it gets reflected as democracy, freedom of trade, and interaction between societies, and peace. Not interaction between society, but peace. When I take the principle of autonomy of self, when I take the principle of rights, individualism, it gets translated on political level as democracy, it gets translated on economic level as freedom of trade, and it gets translated at societal level or systematic level as peace. As peace. And why did liberalism or idealist school of international politics came? It came for the same reason: peace, democracy, freedom of trade. Right? Freedom of trade. Where did it start? Where did it start? Right? Where did it start? It started by this speech by Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson gave a speech. Woodrow Wilson gave a speech to US Congress. Right? Speech to US Congress, 14 known as 14-point speech in 1918. 1918. 14-point speech as given by Woodrow Wilson in 1918 to US Congress is the start of idealist or liberal school of international politics. Right? Idealist or liberal school of international politics. So what I started with, what is liberalism? Right? It is democracy, it is freedom of trade, and it is peace. In context of mostly peace, did Woodrow Wilson gave his 14-point speech. And peace. Why the peace was the cause of Woodrow Wilson to give this speech? Because destruction caused by World War One. Destruction caused by World War One. How many people do you think died in World War One? How many people died in World War One? 15 to 22 million deaths. 1.15 to 22 million deaths. And it is assumed, it is assumed that nearly one third One third of youth population of Europe was wiped out. One third wiped out during 5 years, right? In World War One, there was technology which was used, tanks were used, mustard gas was used, machine guns were used, machine guns, rattling guns were used. So, what is the issue with this machinery or army instrument? They can kill a lot of people at once, right? There was general fear in the world. If the next war starts, if the next war starts, there is going to be even more death, right? In the destruction caused by World War One, in the fear of peace that the machinery and the bloodthirsty politicians had after World War One, Woodrow Wilson gives this speech to US Congress, right? What what was the idea behind Wilson's speech? Wilson was a great man, but he was a novice, right? He was a novice. He wanted to change the world, right? He wanted and he had conviction of changing world affairs. How did he wanted to change world affairs? He wanted to he wanted to convert jungle into a zoo, right? Jungle into a zoo. What is the principle of survival in jungle? It is survival of the fittest. It is might is right. Or as Kautilya would say, Matsya Nyaya. Matsya Nyaya. Bigger fish eat the smaller one. Matsya Nyaya. Right? Matsya Nyaya. Bigger fish eats the smaller one. In jungle, there is security dilemma. In jungle, people fear their lives. There is constant insecurity of life in jungle, right? In jungle, there is constant insecurity of life. In the same way, states were fearful of the next attack. They did not know when the next attack is going to happen, right? They did not know when the next attack is going to happen, right? There was fear, there was insecurity, there was insecurity of attack, there was insecurity of life. What he meant by zoo, right? What he meant by zoo is his vision. Converting jungle into a zoo means means his vision, right? What is his vision? His vision of converting jungle to a zoo. What is this zoo? This is rule based world order, right? This rule based world order means liberal world order. Converting jungle to a zoo, converting world order without rules to a rule based world order. What is rule based world order? Simply liberal world order. He wanted to bring some order in otherwise anarchical relations between nations. He wanted to bring order, right? He wanted to bring order in otherwise anarchical relations between nations. right? Right. To understand liberal world order or liberal or idealist school or Wilson's vision, you have to understand influences on him, right? Influences on his 14-point speech. The first influence is John Locke, right? John Locke. What John Locke is and what John Locke suggests on individual level. John Locke suggests on individual level that man is rational, right? And he observes reason in man teaches him not to harm others life, liberty and property. Reason in man teaches him not to harm others life, liberty and property. Wilson takes this rationality which John Locke applied to man and observes that states are rational actors, right? The first influence thus is John Locke. The second influence is of Kant, Immanuel Kant. He wrote his pamphlet known as Perpetual Peace. In his pamphlet Perpetual Peace, right? Perpetual Peace, he wrote Perpetual Peace to stop war in Europe. War in Europe. What are the two principles given by Kant in his book in his pamphlet Perpetual Peace? First was republicanism, right? Republicanism basically meant that democracies in public pressure avoid going for war, right? On the other hand, monarchies are war prone, right? This is the first principle. Republicanism, which says democracies in public pressure avoid going into war. And the second principle given by Kant in his book Perpetual Peace to stop war in Europe was free trade. Right? He says that free trade led to integration of economies. When you are dependent on each other, you avoid going to war. Right? When there is integration, there is dependency. There is economic dependency. When there is economic dependency, you avoid war, right? You avoid war. On the other hand, protectionism is war prone. Is war prone. The third influence is Norman Angell. In his book The Great Illusion, observe that observe that it is a illusion. It is a great illusion that victor benefit from war. And the fourth influence is of Richard Cobden, right? Cobden. To remember, you just have to remember Kant and John Locke. Others are, if you don't remember them, it is okay. Now, you have to understand the actual doctrine, actual principles of Wilson's 14-point speech, which led to liberal or idealist school of international politics. So we'll start with Wilson's 14 points. as explained to US Congress in 1918. What is the Wilson's first 14 point, right? Wilson's gave 14 point. We'll understand only four of them, 4 or 5 of them. So Wilson's first point is he replaces replacement of balance of power with collective security. What is balance of power? What is collective security? We will understand in quite a great detail. For now, I will explain to you by a game of seesaw. This is, let's suppose, is a seesaw. This is a person who is sitting on one side of it. This is other person sitting on other side of it. A really bad diagram, but I hope you will understand and you will cooperate with me, right? What is balance of power? Balance of power is nothing but what is the balance of weight? Where does the power moves, weight moves when both of these person sit on a seesaw? This is balance of power. Let's assume they have similar weight, similar power. The seesaw will balance itself. Even one of them is stronger than other, seesaw will go on other side. This is balance of power. This is balance of power. On the other hand, collective security is like is like I'm not able to explain us saucers, right? Rotating saucers. If you have gone, more apt example will be rotating horses. Rotating horses, right? This is a horse, this is a horse, this is a horse, horse. Let the horse rotate. We sit on them. We sit on them. Even if one person falls, the horse, the institution of horse, or the ride of the horse, it will continue to move. Balance of power is not like that, right? Balance of power is not like that. To visualize balance of power and collective security, balance of power is like a seesaw, collective security is like a game of horse, right? It is like a game of horse. In balance of power, seesaw can move either in one direction or other direction. In game of horse, number one, horse moves very slowly. Horse moves very slowly. In that situation, right, you can handle other nations who are falling. There is what do you say, a sense of security in horses game, right? Even weak, even strong, they are equal participant in horses game. Nobody is powerful because institution itself is powerful. Everyone is collectively secure. But in balance of power, one who is strong is secure. Even that person is not secure, right? So this is difference between balance of power and collective security. Wilson's 14 point replaces balance of power with collective security. He replaces might is right to security to everyone. And for collective security, he proposes this institution of of Nations, League of Nations, right? It is like UN. It was a precursor organization to UN. That is why the first principle is international institutionalism. International institutionalism, right? That there should exist an institution which handles affairs of state, which provides security to states. They don't have to increase their powers. The second principle is promotion of democracy. Why? Remember Kant's principle of republicanism, that democracies don't go to war because there is public pressure on them, right? Promotion of democracy. Democracy because there is promotion of human rights in democracy as well. Promotion of human rights. Why this concept came? Because nearly 22 million people died during World War One. The third principle is freedom of trade, again taken from Kant, whereby Kant says that two trading nations are hard to get in conflict with each other, because if they get in conflict with each other, there is economic loss to both of them. The fourth principle is freedom of navigation on high seas. Freedom of navigation on high seas, right? This 14-point speech later led to formation of League of Nations, but eventually League of Nations collapsed and we see World War II, right? League of Nations collapsed and we see World War II happening. World War II happening. That is why, as World War II happened, that is why the Wilson's 14-point speech failed. That is why there is this scholar who E. H. Carr, in his book 20 Years Crisis, calls calls and criticizes liberals to be utopian. Why E.H. Carr believes and calls liberals utopian? Because he criticizes them, and he criticizes them for thinking that peace is possible. Peace is possible, right? Peace is possible, and he calls them utopian because they assume that human reason can be applied to bring qualitative transformation. Qualitative transformation with respect to what? With respect to world order. World order, which was earlier jungle, and Wilson says he is going to turn it into zoo. EH Carr says that it was jungle, it will continue to be jungle. Human reason cannot bring qualitative transformation in world order. World order is going to be jungle as it is. There is another scholar who criticizes or calls them sarcastically, right? Ronald Niebuhr calls liberals children of light, right? Children of light. So this was liberal or idealist school of international politics, right? I hope this was helpful. From the next lecture, I'll start with the man who criticizes liberalism to be utopian, the man who criticizes liberalism to be utopian. He observed that peace is not possible, and he observes that human reason cannot bring qualitative change. World order is continue to be jungle. Will understand realism, will understand E. H. Carr and his book 20-Year Crisis 1919 to 1939. Thank you so much. I hope this helped. We'll start with realism from the